everybody, Camelia here. Welcome to a new sewing tutorial. Today I have for you Butterick 6855 and this blouse. You've seen this a while back on my channel, and I decided to make a sewing tutorial for it because there are a few steps, actually one step in this pattern that everybody is confused by, and that will be the how to form the pleat here in the front. Well, in this tutorial you will see all the steps from start to finish, but I know that most of the people that are going to search for this pattern on YouTube, they are going to search it especially for the pleat here. If you only want to see the pleat or only want to see the neckband, please check the timestamps here in the video, and also in the video description you'll find the timestamps, the chapters, that you can jump directly to the step what you want to see. But in the video I cover all the steps, including gathering here the front and how I'm putting the yokes. Also, of course, I'm talking about the neckband, and I'm showing you how I'm sewing the neckband and the pleat. And I must say, in the previous video, in my review of this pattern, I was complaining about the instructions that I could not get them to work for me. But I must say that I think it's one of those steps that you really need to see it, or you need to take my time. I did take my time the first time too, but it's really quite well explained. But yeah, can be a bit confusing. And I'm showing you, of course, how to make the pleat. What else? Of course, I'm showing you how I'm treating the sleeve here with the little hem. I still need to add buttons here, but this is actually the blouse that I'm working on and that I just finished, and I wanted to make the intro with the blouse here to show you. Also, something very important, even if you are going to jump to a particular step, let's say that you want to see only how I'm making the fold or how to put the band, I highly recommend to watch the next chapter here in the video. That will be the preparation of the pieces, because I adjusted some seam allowances, and that might get a little bit confusing if you get directly to the neckband and you see that I'm sewing the neckband only with 6mm seam allowance, while you know that in the pattern is 1.5, or you sew it with 6mm and you get a big mess. So I adjusted the seam allowance of the neckline on the bodies, with the exception of this one here. But on the bodies and also on the band to a 6mm, it's really much easier to sew that band with a small seam allowance. I also adjusted the seam allowance of the armhole and of the cap of the sleeve to 1 centimeter, because again, it's much easier to sew with the 1 centimeter seam allowance. And of course, I'm showing you in the video how to mark and how to make the pin tucks here. I will show you my preferred method also for my preferred presser foot, but of course you can sew it with your normal presser foot. So this is the back with the nice gathers here. I hope you can see in the back, and the yoke and everything is sitting nice and flat. Again, please check the prep step on the here in the video, and then you can jump to any step you need. So I hope you enjoy sewing. If you have any questions, please put them here under the video and I will do my best to help you. Again, we are sewing Butterick 6855, and I hope you'll get the help that you need to make this beautiful blouse. Happy sewing! So before we start with the pieces that we need to have to construct this blouse, I just want to show you where we are going to go with this. As I said, the construction of the neck, of the finishing of the neckband is just a little bit different than in the instructions, where they say that so you apply the first step is to apply the neckband right sides together with the right side of your top. Then you are going to turn it to the inside, and then you are going to stitch in the ditch. But to make it easier, I top stitched all the way around, and as you can see, there is still a really beautiful finish inside and outside. So this is how I'm going to treat the neckband. Again, the fold here, this is how it's looking from the inside. It's also very nice and clean. Again, it's probably different than the instructions, but I could not figure out the instructions, so I'm just going to show you my way of making this. And the end is of course the same as the blouse from the instructions. Here is the sleeve with all the pin tucks, as you can see here. Here is the little cuff with that pleat. I did not baste it or sew it or anything like they say in the instructions. It's actually something like this, but at the moment that you are closing the button, it's getting naturally pleated. So I think you might stitch it here to the inside a little bit, but it's really not happening anything if you leave it like this. So I'm going to show you the pieces that I prepared, and please watch the next step because I'm going to talk about the adjusted seam allowances that I did to make my life a little bit easier on sewing this blouse. Again, this step is really important to watch before you proceed to any other step in this tutorial, because I adjusted some seam allowances, and that's what I'm going to use when making my own blouse. But if you are not going to adjust anything, please keep the seam, please sew your steps with the seam allowances that you have in the pattern. And if I'm not mistaken, almost all of them are 1.5 centimeters. So this is the front piece. As you can see, my fabric is already cut. I have it here under the pattern piece, and I will keep my pieces pinned to the pattern to the paper, because when I'm moving them around here, I don't want to I don't want them to get out of shape, because this is a really soft fabric, and you'll probably make this blouse in a soft fabric. And keeping them on the pinned to the paper until you are at the step that you need to use them, I think is the best solution to avoid stretched edges and things like that. So here is the front. The front is cut in one piece, so you have to cut it single layer. You also need to put the fabric with the right side up, and then also the pattern right side up. That in that way you have the pleat going from right to the left. If you are starting to mix this up, you might end with the pleat going from the left to the right. So this is my pattern piece. Why is that important? Because the center front is somewhere here. So the pattern is going to be pleated in such a way that, so that's why you need to have a right and a left. The seam allowances that I changed here, the armholes are only 3/8 of an inch, because it's much easier to put your sleeve with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I did the same on the sleeve. I'll talk about that in a minute. Another change was to adjust this seam allowance of the neckline here to 6 millimeter only. I did left this one to 1.5 because it's going to be easier to sew all that bulk from the neck bands that are coming here together here at the pleat. So this one is 1.5, 6 millimeter, 6 millimeter, 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter at the armholes, and then the side seams and the upper part here are 1.5 centimeters. That is also original in the pattern. I have here the notches to meet with the back piece. Also important to mark these notches here. This is not really the shoulder, as it's coming a little bit lower on the front, but these ones are important because you are going to put the gathering stitches there to gather into the yoke. And then you have here also 2 small circles that you have to mark from your pattern, and I also marked here. I have a small notch with on the center front. And for the rest, if I'm not mistaken, here is also a notch. I did miss it here, but I think I did make I didn't measure. I need to put one here too. So this is the front, again with the smaller seam allowance for the neckline and for the armhole. And I'm going to keep this one still on the paper. The next piece is the back, and here I have my back again still pinned on the paper. And here I did the same, of course, 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter for the armhole. I have the notches to meet with the front. And here at the upper part where the yoke is coming, you have also some notches. You have this notch is important because this is going to this is cut on the fold, of course, but this notch here, of course, on both sides is going to mark where you need to start gathering the fabric, because here, as you can see in the finished blouse, here there are also gathers in the back that are gathered to the yoke piece. Put this aside. And another mark that I find important, a notch here, a small snip to give the center back, because like that I'm going to be able to match easily with my yoke, and then to distribute the gathers evenly on other side of the center back. So center back notch, the notch for the gathers, and 3/8 of an inch seam allowance for the armhole, and for the rest here is 1.5 at the side seam and 1.5 here at the upper part. Then I have the yoke pieces, and those are here. And the yoke is of course cut double, as you mostly have in these kind of blouses. And here is my yoke piece. As I said, I did do quite of shoulder adjustment here, narrow shoulder adjustment, as in my previous blouse. After making, I think it was 1.5, it was still a little bit too long on my shoulder, so I took a little bit extra. And I also adjusted my seam allowance here to 1 centimeter. The neckline again brought it back to a 6 millimeters, and here I have the original seam of 1.5, and again 1.5 here at this part where it's going to meet the front. And here are my pieces cut. I also marked with a notch the center back, very important, and also with another small snip, really small because I have only 6 millimeter seam allowance, I marked the center back that is going to meet with the neckband. I have here 2 layers, of course. I only need to make the mark for the shoulder, because that mark is important, because I'm going to need to meet it with the point on my sleeve. And because I kept taking off here, I did lose my notch, but I'm going to come back to the original pattern pieces and copy that notch for the shoulder. And the last big piece, let's say, is going to be the sleeve. And as I said, I am making the option with the pin tucks like I did in the previous blouse. And here are my sleeves, still pinned to the pattern piece. I'm going to try to zoom a little bit. And here I adjusted only this one, this seam, 1 to 1 centimeter. And to cut that, actually I folded every pleat and I cut it the 3/8 of an inch. Something that I found a little bit confusing is the fact that if you are pleating all this like it's supposed to be, then you see that actually the pattern is trued up to press the pleats to the front, although in the instructions you have to pleat them to the back, and I did pleat them to the back. It's working. If you really want to be very, very precise about it, you can pleat this in paper before you cut the piece, and then cut here, and you get the really true edge on the pattern. But I let it like this. Here I still have 1.5 centimeter at the under seam. Here are some notches that I made for the pleat. I made only these 2 notches here, and I have here a knot. And of course, if you are making a sleeve, of course you have here the front and you have here the back notch. Very important, the shoulder point is here up, and here they do put also 2 little circles to put some ease stitches. I did not need them, probably because I adjusted my shoulder seam. My armhole got a little bit longer, so I did not need any ease stitches. But if you find that there is a lot of ease in your cap, you can add some ease stitching here to fit it in your armhole. To mark the pin tucks, you have a few options, of course. And in my previous blouse, I used some tracing paper and the tracing wheel. but I did trace them. I think you can see the small red lines. I did trace them on the back, although I will need to press this on the front, so it's a little bit of you know, looking where those are. But if you really want to be accurate and to make it easy, you can also use some thread and make some tailor stacks here. And to make that double, as you can see here, I just sew them and leave like big loops, sew them directly through the paper. And the next step is going to be to cut the loops, or before you cut the loops you can also lift this up. Let's see, I think that's the best way. Lift this up, either way is possible. These ones are already cut. Actually, I think the best is to cut the loops. Take this away. Let's put a little bit this closer. So cut the loops, take the paper away, and then you grab one layer and just open it a little bit. Just a little bit, not to take the threads out. And you'll need actually only a few, because the idea is to get, and like this you have marked your pleat on both layers. Let's see, it's here, and I'm trying not to work my sleeve too much. And as you can see, it's starting here, it's ending here, and then I can grab it like this. I'm going to press it. Of course, you have to take those threads away out, but it's not so difficult. And then I press it with my iron, and I'm going to repeat that for all the other ones. And I'm going to stitch here, but we'll see that later, with a 6mm seam allowance, or 6mm away from the fold actually. So these are the sleeve, but now that it's zoomed in, I think you can see I have all these rows, and I can really take a peek every time to see if I'm exactly there, and then I can also press it. It's really much faster than with the thread. So these are my sleeves, are also ready to go. And now the last bits we'll have to take care. The last pieces that we need to prepare before we start sewing are of course the smaller ones. The neckband, here is the front one, and here is the back neckband, and here is the cuff for the sleeves. In the original pattern they cut only in interfacing the back neckband only one time, but I'm going to interface both layers, and I am going to use what they call block interfacing, and that means that I am going to interface a bigger piece of fabric. I have here my interfacing, and for this pattern I'm going to use something, this has even a little bit of stretch I think, but that's really not interesting for me. I'm using this one, it's a woven interfacing, it's really soft, and it's adding just a little bit of structure. It's really light, but it's giving just a little bit of body to this to make it sit nicely. So don't use non-woven interfacing, you know, the one like paper, because it's going to give you a really stiff neckband and a really stiff cuff, and I don't think that's something that you want in a soft blouse like this. So this is a thin interfacing, and to be sure that, you know, most of the time you cut, also like they say in the instructions, you cut your small pieces from fabric, then you'll bring your interfacing and cut everything from interfacing, and then you'll try to put the small piece of interfacing on the small piece of fabric, and then you hope that your fabric did not stretch out, or your interfacing is not going to crimp your fabric and it's not going to fit anymore. So the best idea what you can do, you have the big piece of fabric where you cut all the other pieces, and how I'm doing this, I am fitting my pieces, so I know that this I will have to cut 2 times on the fold. I have it here one time, where I know that here is going to fit one more time. Then I know that I need to have 2 cuffs, and I know that I need to have 2 of this one. So I know that if from this piece of fabric, so I'm cutting a little bit bigger, and I know that from this piece of fabric I will have enough to cut all the small pieces. So the next step is to interface this piece of fabric with interfacing, and after I'm going to interface this, I'm going to cut all my pieces. The interface fabric is much stable, it's really to handle, it's not going to stretch anymore out, it's not going to shrink anymore or something like that because of the interfacing. So the best way to go is interface a bigger piece of fabric and then cut your small pieces. So that is what I'm going to do next, and then I'll meet you back to start sewing. Okay, so I'm ready to start sewing, and I'm going to follow a little bit the instructions, or at least the order, as much as is fitting my process here, and where I'm going to go really another way, I'm going to tell you. So the first step is to add some ease stitches here at the front piece, the upper front. So I'm going to add here 2 rows of stitches, I'm going to add here, and then because I have already the stitch set, I'm also going to do the same here on the back. So I can take this off the paper, or the paper off, and I can reveal my back. So let's see, here is the back, and I have here my center back notch, and I have here, I have a notch somewhere, here is one notch and here is the other one. So between these two I'm going to put 2 rows of gathering stitches, and I'm going to take care that I am staying within the 1.5 centimeter seam allowance of the pattern. What I also want to do, now that I'll be at the machine, I'm going to put some, this you have also in the instructions, you are going to sew a few stitches here to mark this point, because later we'll have to cut here into this point, and here also, and I will have to keep in mind that I have on this side only 6 millimeters and this one here is 1.5 centimeters. So I'm going to put first a little bit of interfacing, especially I'm interested to cover these points here where I'm going to clip in a minute. So I'm just going to take this away. You see I have here the little notch, but I did not mark it on the paper. Okay, I'm just going to take this away, and I'm going to need it later because, you know, to make that crazy pleat. I have here my piece, here is the back, and I'm just going to bring my pressing table for a second. Let's zoom a little bit out. So I have here my front piece, and I always try to pick the pieces a little bit together, not let them hang too much. And I did mark with tracing paper. I have here 2 X's, I think it's really difficult to see them. This is a heat erasable pen, so that's why I'm going to mark them here. Just for you to see, because this is going to disappear in a moment when I'm going to put the heat on. But I have here the same really light interfacing, and I could put only here 2 small dots, but you know what, I'm just going to cut a piece. So if you really don't want to see it, sometimes you can peel it off later, but I'm just going to put here. It's almost invisible as it has such a light color. So I really want to be within the, or a little bit out the 1.5 seam allowance from here. Be sure that the glue is down, but what I really want to mark is actually these 2 points, or to interface, but usually I'm just putting a piece of interfacing over the complete length. And I'm going to press this, or press it, you know, fuse it. And because my interfacing is such a light type, I can really see those X's through the interfacing. The ones that I made with tracing paper, with red tracing paper. You know, not all the tracing paper is going away. I think only the white one, but the other ones, the yellow, the red ones, they are really not going away, the blue one. So never mark that on the right side of your fabric, because you have really big chance that it's not going to go out. So I think this is done. And as I said, I'm going to come from here, and this I need to be careful. My sewing machine is only 6 millimeters here, all the way here, and then from here like this, and then here again 1.5, and follow this. Just a few straight stitches, nothing fancy. Let me see if I can show this a little bit closer. So nothing fancy, only my regular 2.5 stitch length here and here, because later I'm going to cut here, but not yet. So okay, so now what I want to do, I am going to put my stitch length to my maximum, I think is 5, yes. And I want to pick up my bobbin thread also. Just going to use my hand wheel to bring it up. Just going to leave a little bit longer threads. And I'm going to start with the front. Okay, let's see, I have, where are my notches? I have here one, and I have another one here. So I'm just going to, sew from the front part, or from the right side of the fabric, because like that I'm going to pull the bobbin thread from the inside together, and that's going to work a little bit easier. So I know that I have 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, so I'm going to sew my first row of stitches at 1 centimeter, so 3/8, and then I'm going to 1/2 an inch the second one, and then I'm really close to the 5/8, so 1 centimeter, and then I think it's a 1.25 centimeters, and then I am really close to 1.5. So I'm just going to start with the 1 centimeter, and my machine is saying that I need to engage my, okay, here are my threads, and for the rest I have no adjustments, so only my stitch length is a little bit, you could put also your thread tension a little bit lower, but I'm not going to do that, to make it easier to gather everything. Sorry, I need to find my way with my cam in my face. Okay, so I'm going to stop, 1 stitch more, lift my needle, grab it, and again a little bit longer tails, and I'm going to stitch one more. Let's see, as I said, at 1.2, and like that I am really sure that I'm not going to have to take them out if I don't want. Just a little bit more. So I'm going to repeat with all the other pieces. Okay, so now I have my gathering stitches everywhere on the bodice pieces. I will have later to do some also on the sleeve, but now I really want to do these little corners here to prepare them for the later application of the neckband. So I'm just going, I have my stitch length of, again, back to the standard 2.5, and because this is really not a basting stitch, but it's actually really a stay stitch. So I'm just going to stitch this, and I'm going to aim for this X here, and I'm also let's see, and if I want to be really accurate, I'm going to put it to a 1.5, and if I'm turning this, this should be at the 5/8, and I think that's good. I have here 5/8 marking, so I'm just going to take a few stitches here. That's enough. Okay. Here, this is how it's looking. Again, the blue lines are going to go away in a moment. And here the same. Here I can start even from this. Okay. So this is how it's looking now. I'm not going to cut this now. I'm just going to let them like this. And later when I come with my neckband, I'm going to cut them. So the next step is going to be starting attaching the front and the back to the yokes. But you know, I had that yoke piece that I needed to put back my shoulder notch. And here is the pattern. And originally I started with a size M. So this is size M here. And you know, I told you I adjusted I made the narrow shoulder adjustment, and you see what a big difference is. I mean, I did take quite a lot. Here is the M, but of course my seam allowance is only, instead of 1.5, is only 6 millimeters. So that's why it's a big difference, because here I did not make any fit adjustments. But here is the M, or let's look actually at the shoulder seam. Here is the notch for the shoulder seam, the M, and here is the line. So if here is 3/8 of an inch, but let's say that here was the original seam of 1.5, and it's actually really interesting. Let's see if this is 1.5. Can you see I took away, this has a really long shoulder, it's really not so, it's an inch, it's 2.5 centimeters what I took away for my shoulder adjustment. It's really quite a bit from here all the way to here. So my shoulder seam, or my shoulder notch, is here. It's in line with the M. Okay, so I have now my shoulder seam, shoulder point, really important, and I am going to mark this, of course, also on my yoke, because I need to know where my sleeve is going to be later. And as I said, this you will work probably with a soft fabric like I do here, with a rayon, with a viscose, with a challis or something like that, which is really, it has a mind of its own. So let's see. So this is my piece, and I'm just going to make a snip here. Let's see, I need to pull this a little bit back, and that is why you really want to have the smaller pieces, like the bands and the cuffs, cut directly from the interface fabric, because this is really so, you see, it's moving and it's changing shape, and it's really difficult to you know, to keep on the right with the right shape. I see here that my notches, oops. So you see probably that on this piece I have marked a B, and that's because I want to use this piece of the yoke on the inside of the garment, because to spare a little bit of fabric I turned my piece upside down, so the print is running a little bit differently than the rest of the garment. Alright, so I have here the pieces, and I'm going to start working with the outside yoke. Let's put this a little bit away. Okay, I have here the front with my beautiful stitches, and it's really what you want. You could also start with, I think I'm going to start with the back. Where is the back? The back is here. Okay, so I have here the outside yoke, I'm going to put it with right side up. I have the notches that I need to have, and here is the back piece, and I am just going to start pinning this. And let's see, I need to have it the other way around. The easiest way, here. The easiest way is to start with putting together the center back of the yoke together with the center back of the back piece, the lower back. Put a pin here, and then I want to align. I'm going to keep the threads up. I'm going to align the notch here on the back with the notch on the yoke also, and that's corresponding with the notch that is starting the gathers here. And then I'm going to put at the armholes the pieces together. And actually this is really easy. So I'm going to pin this. I hope you can see and you are not really too far away. Oops. Like so. And I have here this. And now, as you can see, here is the extra fabric that I really want to gather, and I'm going to catch only the, if you really want to have your life really easy, you could use another color for the bobbin. I have here the same, but I know that the threads that are coming from the back are the bobbins, so I'm just going to gather this. A really great way and easy way to gather is to use your serger, but then you'll need to have only 1 centimeter seam allowance here, or the maximum width that your serger can do. So this is what I have now. I'm going to do this side too, and I'm going to put them a little bit to spread them a little bit. It's a little bit too much. Oops. And when I know that the length is good, I'm going to put it so. See, the same here a bit. And then, and now I can put them a little bit evenly over the, that's why it's nice to have that center back mark, because like this I know that I don't have too much to the right or too much to the left. So the same here. Let's see. And I am going to stitch this with the gathers against the bed of the machine. That the feed dogs are going to help with the fabric a little bit, but please be free to stitch it with the gathers up, that you can I don't know, you can manipulate the gathers a little bit like you want to have them. Let's see. So I'm just going to stitch this. You could also at this point you could put the other yoke. Let's see. Right side of the yoke to the wrong side of the fabric, and then pin everything and stitch in one time. But I'm going to stitch the first one and then come again and stitch over the same stitching line to put the other yoke. So I'm just going to go with this to the machine and meet you back in a second. So I'm going to disengage my double transport foot, my IDT system. And I have here my piece, and again, as I said, I'm going to stitch with the bodies that needs to be gathered against the bed of the machine. And I'm going to come here. Let's see. I don't want to move the cam too much. And I'm going to come here And I know that I have 1.5 centimeter seam allowance here. My stitch length is back to normal, to 2.5. And I'm going to stitch now. I could back stitch, but I'm coming in a moment with the other row of stitches, so it's really not necessary. And what I want to do is I want to be sure that here under the fabric is not going to go like this to the side. So I want to keep them nice and perpendicular to my stitching line. So I'm just going to pull back I took my pin away, not so smart. So I have here my first yoke stitched to the back, and what I want to do now, I want to come with the second yoke, that will be this one here, and I want to, because the final piece, in the end the yoke, the right side of the fabric is going to be on the inside, so like so. I want to put the right side of the fabric to match with the inside of my shirt, and I'm just going to match here my center back. Let's see, where is it? Yes. And then I'm going to work from this side, and I'm going to match the yokes again at the armhole, and here another one. And to sew this together, I'm going to sew now from the side that I previously did, so from the other yoke. So I'm going to stitch, I'm going to do my best to stitch exactly on the previous stitching line. And I could also match these two boys here. The previous notches, you know, the notches of the yokes. Oops, it will be here. And now I'm just going to stitch exactly on the top of the previous stitching line, and then we are going to press this. All right. I have here my garment, and I'm just, this time I can put my IDT back on. You know, the IDT is that little thing here in the back. Most of the puff machines have that, and also other brands these days, that is going to help with transporting both layers of the fabric at the same time. Okay, let's see. Okay, and I want to start exactly on the previous. It's really not necessary to backstitch, but if you want, feel comfortable, just do it. So here I'm just following the previous stitching line, nothing fancy. So this is sewn, and now we want to press this really nicely. And to do that, first I will trim a little bit of this seam, because it's really not necessary to have 1.5 centimeter seam allowance here left in the yokes. And let's see, I don't want to, first of all I'm going to press this. Let's bring the iron a little bit. And I want to press only the seam allowance. I'm not going to press into the seam, because I don't really want to smash all those let's see, like so, so I can trim easily the seam allowance a little bit. I'm just going to trim it to maybe 1 centimeter. Oops, like so. Please be careful that you have no things laying under that you are going to cut. I really like to trim with big shears. These ones are a little bit small for my taste, like so. Okay, this will do. Okay, so I have this, and what I want to do, I want to use my seam press, roll press, how you want to call it, and I am going to, let's see, I'm just going to, in the past when I did not have something like this, I was using a towel that was rolled. It was also useful, but this one is the best. So this is the outside. I'm just going to press this. You could also top stitch this at the next step, but I'm not going to top stitch it. So again, I'm just pressing the seam here. Let's see if I can bring you a little bit closer. I'm just pressing with the top of my iron. I'm just pressing the yoke up. So I'm not really going to smash all these beautiful gathers here. Here the ends, there are no gathers. And now I'm going to turn this, and I'm going to do the same for this yoke. Just going to pull everything to the back, and I can feel it with my hands if the other one is nicely flat. Work it a little bit with your fingers and really press only that yoke away from the seam. Let's see, I have here some threads that are from the gathers. Alright, these are away. So this is now done, the yoke is done. Let's zoom out a little bit. So this is done, and now we can start putting the front. Okay, let's see, put this away for a second. So I have here my beautiful back complete with the yokes. You could put also here I don't know, a label or something like that if you want. What I highly recommend after putting the front is to top stitch the neckline. I'm not going to do that, but I do recommend it to you. Not top stitch, but stay stitch the neckline. Maybe I'm going to do it too. So this is done, and now I want to come with the front. So I'm going to put the back right side up, and then I'm going to come with the front. And here you could use the burrito method, you know, where you roll up the back to sew the yoke, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So I have here the front, and I know it's a little bit hard to see with all the prints, but what I want to do first, I have the back, and I have the two yokes here. The back yoke, or the inside yoke, I'm just going to flip it back. So I have here only one layer. The other one is flipped down. So I have here only one layer, and I'm coming with the front, like so. So right sides together. And I'm going to gather the front only onto the outside yoke. So let's see. I have here, I'm going to start on one side, of course. Just going to pin it at the neckline. Let's zoom a little bit in. Oops. So I'm just going to pin it to the outside yoke, to the yoke that you are going to see from the right side or from outside. the other one is folded to the inside. So I have it like this, and I'm going to pull my threads a bit. Let's see the bobbin threads, they are the inside ones. Just going to pull them a little bit. Oops. And also from this side a little bit. I think I'm almost there. So this is how it's looking now, and I'm going to make them, just going to, let's see, I'm going to tie them a little bit on one side. Like so. And let's see how far I am. I think they could be just a bit more like this. Alright. Put one pin more here, closer to the notch. And try to... Now I want to put this, guys, a little bit equal over the whole seam here. And I think I need to so you are going to repeat the same process for the other one, of course, and then we are going to stitch this. Like so. So I'm going to repeat for the other shoulder, and I'm going to meet you back. So I'm going to sew the first go on the front, attaching the front to the outside yoke, and also here I'm going to use the same method as on the other piece. So I'm just going to turn this, and I'm going to sew it with the gathers down. Again, please be free to stitch it from the right side. Here the standard 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. So this is what I have at the moment. So I have my front piece attached to the outside yoke, and now I want to have, going to turn it, and now I want to have, of course, this yoke also attached to the front piece like so. And to do that you have two possibilities. You can use what they have in the pattern instructions, you know, the rolled or the burrito method, and I'm going to show you. So let's see, you are going to turn this like so, with the right side up. You are going to put the back, reveal the seam here, and what you want to do is to roll, you roll the front all the way here, and then you roll your back all the way here, and then you come with the inside yoke, and you are going to get really like a burrito, and you will be able to stitch the two shoulders. But I'm not going to do the burrito method. You have it in the instructions also. What I like to do is to arrange the garment. So this is like how it's going to end up. This is the inside with the inside yoke, and here I have the front of the garment. So I have now the garment inside out, and I have here the yoke. This is still loose, let's see, as you can see. So what I want to do, I'm going to start here at the armhole. I'm just going to grab these two, and I'm going to put them the right side to the wrong side, like so. Can you see that? So I have them now on the correct, how they are going to end up. I'm just going to grab this and meet them at the armhole. I'm going to put a pin like so. I'm just going to very gently to bring the complete shoulder seams together. I'm going to cut those in a moment. Like so. And like this, I'm not putting a lot of strain on the fabric by rolling and pulling. So now I'm just going to knit this together. And again, I'm going to stitch from this side where I have the previous stitching line. So I'm going to do the same for this one. Let's repeat that. This is the inside yoke that is still free. The garment is inside out. And here is the previous part that we've stitched, the outside yoke with the bodice. So now I have it like so, and I'm just going to take the yoke that is still free, and I'm going to knit these two together here at the neckline in this case, and really matching the yokes actually together at the seam. Put a pin and then work this to this side. Then I'm just going to stitch, as I said in the previous stitching line here. Alright, so I have here my small yoke seam, or the shoulder, let's call it like that, although it's not really on the shoulder. So I'm just going to stitch again over the previous stitching line. Let's see. So now I have this. It's looking a little bit messy, and now the magic is going to happen. You know, like you always hear when people are doing the burrito method tutorials. Let's see if I can bring you a little bit down. And okay, so again, you can go back and watch again if it was too fast for you, but this is what I have now at the shoulder seams. And also here I'm going to trim this a little bit away, and that's the thing with having big seam allowances. I'm just going to trim it to 1 centimeter, I think, something like this, and then repeat here. Okay, and now I can turn this out. So let's see. It's not so much of a turning because we did not do all that rolling. And okay, let's see. I'm just going to open this and try to work the seam out really gentle. Actually, the best is to give this just a little bit of press, you know, because we have those gathering stitches here. My iron is in the meantime cold again, or you know, cold. It's not giving steam. All right, and now I can, let's find my way, I can take this out. And this is exactly the same result like the other method, only you don't need to roll up too much. Okay, this needs to come out. Oops, maybe just cut them. All right, a few more threads. So this is what I have now on the front, and I want, of course, this one too. This is how it's looking now, stitched, and I'm just going to take it out. Oh, this is really, really cute. And this is from the inside. So now I'm going to press this a little bit in the same way that I pressed the back. Let's see. And again, just going to press the seam a little bit. So our back and front are attached. We have a beautiful yoke on the outside, beautiful on the inside. Of course, as I said, you could top stitch here, maybe 1 centimeter away from the seam, the same on the front. I'm not going to do that. The next step is going to be to stay stitch this. And if you have a really, I should have said this in the beginning, I'll be careful to mention this. Stay stitching the neckline is a step that they are saying now, also because you are you are basting these layers together here at the neckline and also here at the armholes. But I think stay stitching the neckline on the yoke, it could be a good idea to do also in the beginning of the construction, because like that you are really sure, depending on your fabric, that is not going to go out of shape. But in my case, I'm going to stay stitch this, or I'm going to baste them together in order to make it easier to apply the neckband. And later, of course, here the sleeve in the armhole. So I'm going to put those layers at the back neckline together. Let's see, I have a few notches there that I can put together to be sure that these are going to fit nicely. So again, I have here only 6mm seam allowance. I need to keep that in mind and to put my stay stitching within the 6mm seam allowance. Let's see, put my differential feet on. Okay. I could put my stitch just 1 step higher. My center back notches should match here. Let's see. Where is the other one? I cannot see it. Yes. Here I have 1 centimeter, so I can just... This is on the armhole, on the yokes.